There was a time when fire devoured the world's memory, and from its ashes emerged a secret that could have forever changed the perception of time and existence. The Maya called it the code of time and space, a forgotten language that unites the beating of the human heart with the breathing of the stars. Today, after centuries of silence, that knowledge speaks to us again. When flames consumed the wisdom of an ancient people, no one could have imagined that among the ashes a secret more resistant than fire would survive. It was the year 1562 when Diego de Landa, Bishop of Yucatan, decreed that all sacred Mayan codices be burned as relics of idolatry. Thus, under the relentless sun of Mani, parchments of amate bark, traced with cinnabar and jade pigments, dissolved into smoke, taking with them centuries of astronomical observations and cosmological visions that transcended human measure. The Spanish, in the blind certainty of purifying pagan superstitions, instead annihilated a science of time that counted not hours but states of consciousness, a knowledge in which the measurement of the sky was also the measurement of the soul. Nevertheless, not all was lost. An elderly priest, the last custodian of a lineage of astronomer priests, managed to save fragments of a unique code, dedicated not to rituals or tributes, but to the very mystery of time, conceived as a living being. In the centuries that followed, that fragment of knowledge survived in silence, passed down orally by the few custodians of primordial wisdom. Their voice, emerging like a distant echo, proclaims even today that time is not a line flowing toward its end, but rather a sacred circle in which past, present, and future intertwine in an eternal dance. The Maya, unlike those who measure, inhabited time. They experienced it as a cosmic breath, as the skin of the divine. Thus speaks the voice that proclaims itself the last guardian of time that cannot be counted, having survived the flames and ruins, become the incarnate memory of what fire could not destroy. He narrates that, when the men of steel arrived, he was a young priest of Chichen Itza, initiated into the secrets of the Tzolkin, a reader of the omens inscribed in the flight of Quetzals, and an interpreter of the sacred numbers governing the orbits of the stars. No one, however, could have prepared him for the spectacle of the annihilation of knowledge. Each burning codice represented not a simple book, but an entire library, a stellar observatory illuminated with formulas of sacred geometry, an atlas of the cosmos and of human interiority. Diego de Landa, with his torch raised as a symbol of blind zeal, believed he was destroying superstitions, but he was erasing the most refined knowledge America had ever conceived about the mystery of time. However, the priest knew that the true code had never been written on paper. It was engraved in the memory of the wise, tattooed in the heartbeats, imprinted in the breath that followed the rhythm of the cosmos. So, when the books turned to ashes, the survivors gathered under the crescent moon. The elder Itzam Naj, whose life spanned 80 cycles of Venus, proclaimed that time could not be burned. "We are the living codes," he said. "In us survives that which no one can destroy." In that instant, the young man understood that his task was not to preserve knowledge, but to become living knowledge itself. In the decades that followed, as the Mayan Empire fell to conquest, the code of time continued to beat in the hearts of the few initiates who, hidden in caves and abandoned temples, preserved it like an ancient, still-beating heart. They knew the day would come when humanity, forgetful of sacred time, would need to remember how to inhabit it. And at that moment, they say, every prepared spirit would be guided by time itself to rediscover its circular nature. The conquerors never found the most important code because it was not written on parchment, but traced in the eternal motion of the stars. Every sunrise was a page, every eclipse a revelation, every planetary conjunction a prayer. While the conquerors counted days and years, the priests read the sky as a sacred book, knowing that time does not flow but rotates, and that what was, is, and will be coexists in an eternal return. When a Spanish captain asked how they could predict eclipses without instruments, the priest replied that they did not foresee them, they remembered them, because the future, for those who live within the circle of time, is but an echo of the past repeating itself in another form. Time does not advance but falls back on itself, like the breath that exhales and inhales, eternal and indivisible. The invaders, with their linear clocks and calendars, instead brought a disease, the belief that time is finite, that it flees and is lost, that it must be measured and possessed. This illusion, the disease of linear time, would infect the entire world, generating anxiety, worry, and the blind frenzy of continuous activity. The Maya, however, knew the medicine, the art of inhabiting circular time. Each day of the Tzolk'in was not just a date, but a frequency of consciousness, a breath of the universe. Whoever was born on an Imix day embodied the primordial dawn of creation. Whoever lived on an Ik day became the breath that animates all things. Thus, the people of the maze did not possess time, they were it. Each individual represented a luminous point in the great circle of existence, connected to all the other points in an eternal harmony. Death did not mark an end, but the completion of a cycle and the prelude to a new beginning. This is why the ancients could build temples that would take generations. They knew that since time returns, they themselves would participate in another form in the laying of the final stone. The secret of time lay in the numbers that formed its divine backbone. Numbers were not quantities, but living beings, sacred vibrations that united the earthly and spiritual worlds. There were three master keys, 13, 20, and 260. 13 represented the heavens of consciousness, the inner steps the soul must ascend to reach divine wholeness. As priests ascended the temples, each step corresponded to an inner heaven, and on the 13th level, their spirits temporarily united with the gods. 20, on the other hand, embodied the totality of humanity, 10 fingers and 10 toes, 20 connections between the body and the universe. Each human being was a living antenna capable of receiving 20 types of cosmic energy. Finally, 260, the product of 13 times 20, measured not days, but combinations of states of consciousness. It was the sacred cycle of cosmic gestation, the time necessary for the soul to form in the womb of creation, like a child in its mother's womb. Every human being, before birth, goes through the 260 days of the Tzolk'in, learning the mysteries of the cosmos and forgetting them with the first breath. Thus, life is a process of remembrance, the slow reconquest of the wisdom possessed before birth. Sacred numbers were not human inventions, but the native language of the cosmos. The cycles of Venus, the orbits of the planets, the pulsations of the stars, and even the biological rhythms of the human body resonated in harmony with the proportions of 13, 20, and 260. The ancient priests recognized in these ratios the code of the divine, the grammar with which the universe expresses its music. And when this sacred mathematics was combined with the wisdom of the Popol Vuh, a vision of creation emerged in which the human being was not a biological accident, but a deliberate act of the gods, perfected through 4 trials. The first men, molded from clay, dissolved because they lacked spiritual solidity. The second, sculpted from wood, were strong but heartless. The third, made of flesh, forgot humility and believed themselves divine. Only the fourth, created from sacred corn, were complete. Corn, a plant that grows toward the light while maintaining deep roots in the earth, became the substance of the human body and spirit. From then on, eating corn meant remembering one's divine origin. Each grain was a particle of cosmic memory, each cornbread a sacrament. The cornmen were born to be bridges between heaven and earth, to protect creation as beings conscious of their own luminous nature. The greatest gift the gods bestowed on the men of corn was the ability to read the invisible fabric that binds all moments of time, a luminous weave that the priests called the great loom of existence. Calendars were the maps for orienting oneself in this sacred web, tools for understanding the subtle currents that flow through every instant. While the Europeans brought a mechanical calendar of 12 months and 365 days, a rigid and linear sequence that advances without return, the Maya knew of 17 interconnected calendars, each revealing a different facet of time. Each dawn possessed its own quality, each night a different frequency, and the combination of all these cycles constituted a cosmic symphony that only trained minds could hear in its perfect harmony. The solar calendar of 365 days followed the seasons and harvest cycles, but the sacred calendar of 260 days mapped the movements of the soul. When the two calendars crossed, they generated the 52-year calendar wheel, the great cycle in which no 2 days were ever identical. Then there were the cycles of Venus, each 584 days, which taught love and beauty, the lunar calendars that guided inner transformations, and those of the 9 lords of the night, which marked the rhythms of creative darkness. Each calendar was like a differently colored thread in the loom of the cosmos, and the priest, like a divine weaver, wove their movements to reveal the design of destiny. An old woman, wise as the moon, that wanes and returns, taught her disciple the secret of weaving time. Each thread has a color and a direction, she said, but only when they are woven together does the complete design manifest. This is how calendars work. They don't predict the future, but show the energetic consequences of every choice. Destiny is not a condemnation, but a set of possibilities waiting to be activated. When the priest pulled a red thread in his loom, he could choose to raise or lower it. Both paths were possible, but only one harmonized with the overall design. Likewise, humans who know the rhythms of time can choose the right moment to act, understanding the invisible current that supports or hinders every undertaking. Warriors consulted calendars to determine whether battle would bring purification or disharmony. Farmers sowed following the earth's rhythm. Mothers named their children according to the frequency of their birthday. The ancients knew that time is not a neutral container, but a living substance that shapes events. Even the Spanish, albeit unknowingly, arrived at the precise moment when a 5,000-year cycle was coming to an end, when the temporal currents became tumultuous and ancient orders dissolved to make room for new possibilities. The stars, in the vision of the priests of the time, were not distant lights but divine voices singing melodies of knowledge. One of them, Venus, was considered the cosmic midwife, the star presiding over every spiritual birth. Its 584-day cycle traced a 5-petaled rose in the sky, symbolizing the golden ratio in motion, the rhythm with which the cosmos itself breathes. The moon, on the other hand, was the mistress of internal change, and its phases represented the stages of the soul's alchemical process. The new moon, a time of silence and reception; the first quarter, a time of germination; the full moon, the fullness of magical power; the waning quarter, a moment of distillation into wisdom. Eclipses were not feared events, but cosmic surgical interventions, moments when the universe removes old patterns to allow rebirth. When the sun was veiled, it was as if the celestial jaguar devoured the light to return it purified. On those days, priests entered states of altered consciousness, fasted, burned copal, and awaited visions, direct messages from the deities. During a total lunar eclipse, a young priest had a vision of the future, seeing immense cities inhabited by men who had forgotten the language of the stars and lived hypnotized by artificial lights. However, he also saw souls who, driven by an inner calling, would begin to remember lost wisdom. The stars, the vision said, never cease to call. They whisper to ancestral memory until someone responds. At the heart of this cosmology, time was also medicine. Every illness, according to ancient healers, arose from a dissonance between the soul and the rhythms of the cosmos. When a human being lost step in the universal dance, he or she became ill in body and spirit. The priest did not cure with herbs or metals, but prescribed the right moment, the right temporal quality to restore balance. Time was administered like a precise medicine, and every pain had its healing day. A woman, shrouded in mourning, was instructed to perform a daily ritual for 200 days until the return of the same temporal combination in which her husband had died. At dawn on the sacred day, she felt the presence of her beloved soul and wept tears of liberation. The wound was healed. This was the medicine of time. To heal fear, they experienced Imix days, which returned to the sure origin of creation. To heal anger, Ok days, which teach the loyalty of protective love. To dispel confusion, Ahau days, in which the light of the inner sun reveals the soul's purpose. But the most insidious disease was the one brought by the invaders, the belief that time is a commodity that is consumed, that the present slips away, and the past is lost. To cure this ailment, the priests seated the sick in a circle of stones and guided them in the breathing of the sacred calendar. 13 deep breaths, 20 more subtle ones, for 260 cycles. At first, the linear mind resisted, then slowly opened to the eternity of the moment. Those who completed the practice learned that true time is not measured but inhabited, and that by inhabiting it, everything returns to harmony. Over the centuries, priests discovered that their temples were not simple places of worship, but resonant instruments designed to interact with the frequencies of the universe. Each pyramid was a stone tuning fork, an amplifier of cosmic vibrations. At Chichen Itza, clapping your hands in front of the steps still echoes today like the song of the Quetzal, symbol of the serpent god. It is not a miracle, but sacred acoustics. The structures were calculated to reproduce frequencies capable of elevating consciousness, opening portals of communion between humanity and the divine. In Palenque, the Temple of the Inscriptions was built to transform the priest's heartbeat into audible music, tuning the human heart to the golden ratio. The entire universe, the masters taught, is sound. What we call silence is merely frequency undetected by the ear. The Earth vibrates at 783 Hz, the Moon at 210, Venus at 442, Mars at 240, Jupiter at 183. The human body, created to resonate with these frequencies, could become a musical instrument of the cosmos. In solemn ceremonies, priests arrange themselves in resonant circles, each vibrating at a planetary frequency. The resulting chord could evoke rain, healing, and visions. Temples were not places of superstition, but laboratories of spiritual science, where sound, mathematics, and consciousness cooperated to alter reality. Each stone was programmed to store and transmit beneficial vibrations for centuries to come, as if the sacred music of the Maya were engraved in the rock itself, ready to be reactivated when humanity rediscovered its inner voice. The ancient prophets had predicted that when the time for the Great Awakening came, the temples would begin to reactivate, radiating the frequencies stored in their stone hearts. When the belief spread in the modern world that December 21st, 2012 marked the end of the world, few understood the true meaning of the prophecy. For the Maya, there is never an end, only transformation. Each closing cycle prepares a new beginning. That date marked the conclusion of a cycle of over 5,000 years, a period necessary for the maturation of human consciousness. On the day of the solstice, the sun would align with the center of the Milky Way, the mouth of the cosmic jaguar, symbolizing a galactic birth. Earth, after a long gestation period, would give birth to a new humanity, aware of its divine nature. This rebirth would not occur in an instant, but through decades of transformation. Political and natural crises, technological revolutions, and above all, a widespread spiritual awakening. The ancients predicted that humans would begin to perceive synchronicities, visions, and subtle connections, not signs of madness but symptoms of the activation of their cosmic DNA. However, dark forces, accustomed to dominating dormant consciousness, would attempt to oppose them, sowing fear and distraction. The tension between sleep and awakening would be inevitable, as every birth requires effort. The 30-year period following 2012 therefore represents humanity's cosmic travail. the transition from spiritual infancy to stellar consciousness. Those who first remember, called the cosmic parteras, came to facilitate the birth of the new species, reactivating ancient knowledge in the collective memory. They recognize in the symbols of the jaguar and the serpent the two complementary processes of transformation. The first, swift and lightning fast, symbolizes instant enlightenment. The second, slow and steady, represents gradual metamorphosis. The jaguar, capable of moving between water, land, and darkness, embodies the master who knows how to travel between the visible and invisible worlds, transforming fear into power. The serpent, which renews itself by shedding its skin, teaches continuous rebirth and the ascent toward the light. Initiates underwent both trials. The jaguar transformation, which lasts 13 days of fasting and confronts all inner limitations, and the serpent transformation, a complete 260-day cycle during which obsolete emotions, memories, and identities are progressively abandoned. At the end of the process, the human being is reborn as a feathered serpent, united with cosmic consciousness. These symbols were not poetic allegories, but psycho-spiritual maps that anticipated the path of humanity itself. After 2012, every individual would be called to experience one of these metamorphoses. Those who experience rapid and sudden changes walk the path of the jaguar. Those who change slowly, shedding layers of old consciousness, walk the path of the serpent. Both paths lead to the same goal, the fusion of the human with the divine. The temples, scattered throughout the jungle like hearts of stone, were designed to accompany these transformations. Each stone was placed according to mathematical proportions designed to amplify specific spiritual frequencies. The Great Pyramid of Chichen Itza, with its 365 steps, was conceived as a ladder of time, and its summit, during the equinoxes, aligned with the luminous descent of the feathered serpent. Climbing the steps following the sacred rite meant gradually awakening the body's energy centers until becoming a living antenna of the cosmos. From the summit, the priest could perceive the invisible network that connected all the sacred cities. Palenque, Tikal, Copan, Uxmal, each resonating with a particular energy, all connected by currents of force that modern people cannot yet measure. This temple network was a system of spiritual communication, capable of transmitting knowledge not only across space but also across time. The buildings were archives of consciousness. In their stone chambers, initiates deposited their spiritual minds, imprinting them in the limestone crystals so that future generations could access them. The temples are therefore not ruins, but living libraries, still inhabited by the consciousnesses of the masters. Today, when visitors report inexplicable visions or sensations, it is because the temple network has been reactivated, resonating with an awakening humanity. The stones, like tuned instruments, are resuming their ancestral song. The ultimate mystery, hidden beneath layers of symbols and metaphors, is revealed in the secret that the guardians of time called the return of forbidden time. Time, they asserted, is not a river flowing outside us, but the very essence of our existence. Humans do not live immersed in time. Time lives within them. Consciousness is not a product of the brain, but the substance from which time is woven, and every thought, emotion, or act literally creates the temporal rhythm in which beings dwell. Ancient priests noted that the same event could last moments or eternities depending on the inner state of the person experiencing it. For the ecstatic initiate, a 3-hour ritual could stretch into days of mystical experience, while for those caught in the linear mind, it passed in a meaningless flash. Time expands or contracts in response to the quality of consciousness. It is not constant, but flexible, malleable. From this insight came the supreme revelation. Human beings are the creators of their own time. Every individual, potentially, is a temporal god. This truth was so powerful that it made any external domination impossible. This is why the conquerors intuitively sought to erase it, fearing that a humanity aware of generating its own time could no longer be subdued. They destroyed the written codes, but could not erase the knowledge imprinted in the bones of the world. The guardians then decided to veil the secret, to hide it in symbols, numbers, and architecture, waiting for a new era to understand it without abusing it. Today, in the Age of Awakening, this knowledge resurfaces as collective memory. The illusion of linear time, the foundation of modern civilization, falters in the face of the discoveries of consciousness. Humanity is beginning to perceive that the past and the future are but perspectives of the same eternity. Authentic time, sacred time, is multidimensional, fluid, and obeys creative will. In it, miracles are not exceptions but natural manifestations. Synchronicity, instant healing, telepathic communications are expressions of consciousness remembering its divinity. Mayan calendars were not measuring instruments but devices of awakening. Each day of the Tzolk'in represented a quality of time, an opportunity to create a corresponding reality. There were days of birth when everything is possible, days of communication when ideas flow like a sacred wind, days of mystery when the veil of the universe lifts, revealing its luminous fabric. The initiate who learned to recognize and attune to these frequencies ceased to be a victim of circumstances and became the architect of his own destiny. The masters of time were able to extend a moment of joy into an eternity of bliss, or condense years of learning into a few hours of enlightenment. They knew how to travel back to heal wounds from the past, or project themselves forward to receive insights from the future, consciously navigating the sea of temporal possibilities. This science, which modern man calls metaphysics, but which for the Maya was daily experience, taught that supreme freedom consists in recognizing oneself as living time. You are self conscious time, the ancient masters affirmed, eternity observing itself in the play of mortality. Understanding this means breaking the spell of separation, for he who creates time also creates space and form. He becomes one with the divine consciousness that permeates all. Human beings, awakened to their nature as embodied time, recognize in every heartbeat the very pulsation of the cosmos, in the rhythm of breathing, the echo of original creation. The ancients did not disappear, as historians believe. They transformed into pure time, spreading in the currents of eternity. Every time a human perceives a perfect coincidence, a pain from the past dissolves, or a premonition of the future comes true, they are present, invisible guardians guiding humanity toward the awareness of its immortal nature. Their legacy does not lie beneath the jungle, but pulses in the blood of every descendant of maize, in the dreams of those who still seek the meaning of lost time. Thus, the great Codex never found was not made of paper or stone, but of flesh and breath. The true sacred book is man himself, his genetic memory, his ever-expanding consciousness. Every cell holds the library of the universe. Every DNA is a moving calendar, a spiral repeating the rhythm of the stars. The outer temples were models of the inner temples. The pyramid rising toward the sky is the body raising its energy. The serpent of light descending the steps is the consciousness incarnating to understand itself. When human beings remember this, they become the bridge between past and future, between the divine and the earthly. They are the living continuation of the priests of time, the heir to the sacred science of synchronicity. You are not a human being traversing time, says the ancient voice. You are time traversing the human form. Every moment, therefore, is a creative act. Every breath, a new birth of the universe. In recognizing this truth, man regains his inner sovereignty. He no longer says, I don't have time, because he knows that time is his very substance. He no longer complains about the speed of the days, because he understands that it is his consciousness that determines their rhythm. In the morning, the initiate chooses what quality of time he wishes to experience, time of love, of healing, of creation, and with that intention, he shapes his daily reality. He recognizes that every activity has a propitious moment and that forcing natural rhythms leads to disharmony. Honoring time, collaborating with it as a living ally, is the highest act of wisdom. When man treats time with gratitude, time itself responds by opening spaces of unexpected possibilities, harmonizing events, creating encounters, recomposing destinies, and in the profound silence of the soul, He perceives the voice of time whispering, "You and I are one." This is the fulfillment of the prophecy, the closing of the sacred circle. Forbidden time, which the conquerors attempted to erase, has returned, not as doctrine or archaeological memory, but as a living experience in every awakening being. The memory of the stars flows through the veins of humanity. Calendars turn in the helix of DNA. The pyramids are reflected in the heart that beats to the rhythm of the tzolkin. The invisible guardians who once guarded the flame of knowledge amid the ruins now observe the world's rebirth. Humanity, finally aware of its nature as living time, is preparing to create a new era, no longer based on the fear of the end, but on the eternal return of light. Welcome home, brother of time. Welcome home, sister of eternity, echoes the ancient forests. The circle has closed, the prophecy is fulfilled, and the true journey, that of time remembering itself through humanity, has only just begun. The Mayan message was not a prophecy of the end, but a call to awaken, to remember that time does not consume us. We create it. It is our consciousness that shapes our days, our dreams, our lives. This is the true legacy that the flames could not destroy, the awareness that every moment is sacred, and that within each of us lies a guardian of time. If this journey has touched you, if you felt something ancient and true resonate within you, leave a like. It's a small gesture that gives strength to this message and helps it reach other seekers like you. Leave a comment to tell me what you felt or understood during this journey through time. Your words are part of the same memory we are rebuilding together. And subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the secrets hidden between history, myth, and consciousness, because each video is a step closer to remembering who we truly are. May the light of time accompany you. May your days be filled with meaning, and may each breath bring you ever closer to the center of the sacred circle. We'll see each other again soon, in the same eternal moment, under the same sky.